Hi there, I'm April Callis-Birchmeier. I'm a master change management professional, certified change management professional, and project management professional, and wanted to share with you today some really interesting and important information about facilitation skills for change managers. Facilitation skills are something that is really important to project management professionals and change management professionals, but I feel like it's especially important for change professionals to be really great in their facilitation skills. And it's one of those areas that sometimes we don't recognize is a skill set that we don't have. I'll tell you that when I first was working in my change management career, it never occurred to me that facilitation skills were separate from my presentation skills. I had been a professor, I had been teaching a number of different seminars, and I had worked as a corporate trainer for Abbott Labs. I had a lot of presentation skills. I knew how to present information. And as a teacher, I was good at eliciting discussion. But it wasn't really until I attended facilitation skill training that I understood that there was something different in a facilitator than in a teacher or a trainer or a change professional. And so let's talk a little bit about why facilitation skills are so incredibly important for change management professionals, how facilitation skills really help those who we're facilitating and working with move from awareness and understanding to engagement, where they're really engaged in a conversation, and really how to leverage the role of facilitation to build clarity, to build trust, to ensure that we have participation in the change effort itself. So, when I first understood that facilitation skills were different than presentation skills, I was a little surprised. I thought I did a great job of facilitating conversations when I was teaching and training. And it was news to me that there were more things that I should be doing to help people truly engage with the material, with the change, with the business process redesign, or with the structure of the change than I previously had imagined. So when we think about, what exactly are facilitation skills, I think of facilitation skills as very similar to coaching skills. And I love to coach leaders, but they are slightly different than coaching skills because we're doing them in a group setting with a group of people. And so some key facilitation skills are things like asking effective questions. Asking effective questions is harder than it sounds. Really kind of being able to identify the kernel of what a question is or should be asked, and then asking it in a way that effectively helps those in the room to think through why the question is asked and to start to discover the not necessarily the answer, but the conversation that that question really leads to. When I think about my coaching experience, I think about asking important questions and effective questions. And one of the things that I think um, is really important to ask when there's some sort of a blockage that we're having in a conversation is to ask, and what else? And what else is on your mind? Because I find that if I'm not asking, and what else, for the person I'm having this conversation with, I'm facilitating this conversation with, then I'm not hearing the piece that they haven't said yet. And I haven't asked about it. And so they haven't felt free to share it. I think also guiding discussion. Many times in a facilitation session or a business process design, or maybe we're doing a redesign of workflow, there's a point where a discussion might get heated, or maybe the discussion just seems to kind of go off track and go down some sort of rabbit hole that somebody is interested in, but maybe the group won't benefit from. It's important for the facilitator to guide the discussion, to see when there is that off ramp, or when somebody has gone down a rabbit hole and is now a little bit lost. They have taken a side road. They're hot rodding out in the mud field somewhere, and you have to sort of guide them back into the discussion that we're having. I think encouraging participation is also a very important facilitation skill, because not everybody is comfortable in speaking off the top of their head or speaking quickly about something. Many people need a little bit of time to digest information, to think through it before they are comfortable stating their thoughts or their ideas or even a counter argument. And so recognizing as a facilitator that not everybody participates in the same way, and helping encourage the participation of those people who don't like to just speak off the cuff, who really want a little bit of time to think. Encouraging them to participate in the way that makes them comfortable is incredibly important. So many times I will have a little beginning of a discussion, and then I might say, let's just pause. And I'd like for you to write down 3 or 4 ideas that you've had around this discussion we're having at the moment. And I'll give 3 or 4 minutes for people to collect their thoughts, jot a few notes, and then I'll say, let's resume our discussion and hear from everybody this time. Different perspectives, there's no right or wrong. Let's have a conversation. And that really helps those who need that extra time to just sort of think through what and decide what they want to say, and how they'd like to show up and how they'd like to say it, allows them to then participate. When I was younger, I think I was guilty of sometimes letting the most vocal person, the most insistent, the dominant person in the room really guide the discussion. And I do think that it's important to encourage that participation and to guide that discussion as a facilitator. I also think it's really critically important to manage group dynamics. We all have dealt with different types of personalities in our workplaces, and some are very dominant. Some are, those folks that seem to want to distract everybody from the issue. Some people don't like any kind of conflict, and they want to be sarcastic or insert humor of some sort. So recognizing group dynamics and managing the group dynamics to ensure that we're accomplishing what we have set out as our objective as a facilitator, and that we're not allowing somebody to pull the group in one direction or in another direction, or to dominate the group or to undermine the group. We are managing the group dynamics very cleanly and without bias as a facilitator, which means that we sometimes have to call things out and say, I heard this. I see that you are passionate about this. I think it's important to allow others to also express thoughts, and just try to make sure that we're not letting anybody, any one person or one group dominate an entire group facilitated effort. I think listening actively, and not just listening because we're listening to words, but really listening to what's behind the words and what's under the words, what the meaning is of what someone is saying, and asking if we're not clear about a meaning. Asking, do you mean this? Is this what you're trying to identify? That's an important skill as a facilitator, to listen actively. And it's a hard skill. It's so tiring that when I'm done facilitating a session, I'm exhausted usually. I'm worn out from listening and from actively listening to what's being said and to what's not being said. And I think also keeping our conversation very focused and very productive. It is difficult to rein people in sometimes when they want to talk for a bit and give an example, but sometimes those examples will go a little bit far afield. And so asking that person to really get to the point and then bringing them back and ensuring that the conversation stays focused and productive is essential as a facilitator. You know, sometimes it feels as though a conversation will start to become non-productive when I'm facilitating. Maybe we start going around and around about a word or about a thought, or somebody is really, adamant about a specific point. And then sometimes I might really just ask them, what is the real challenge here? What is the real challenge here? And sometimes that will help move that conversation back to productivity. So, practicing facilitation skills is very helpful. And we don't always have this ability to practice, but we can find places to practice. Facilitation skills are one of those things that get better the more you use them. And so I like to think about helping change management professionals improve those facilitation skills by promoting stakeholder focus groups, stakeholder engagement conversations. And so the more that you can talk to a stakeholder and find out, what they're thinking about a change, the more practice you have at actively listening to what they say and guiding conversations and encouraging participation and asking effective questions. I think we also can really work in be very aware of in meetings and conversations about our own dialogue and our own feedback. As a facilitator, it's important to give feedback on how things are going in that session. So just listening to people is not helpful to them. Providing feedback on what I'm hearing and what it seems to be the direction that we're moving in is very helpful. I think also using your facilitation skills to really ask some penetrating questions that might get under the surface a little bit and try to surface some resistance or frustration or concerns. People have concerns. And whenever people have concerns, it's not necessarily just that they're resistant. There may be really good reasons for their concerns that we don't know about and that they're the only person that knows about. And so it's important to listen and important to have this shared understanding. And it's also important to try to provide guidance around alignment. How can we all get aligned that we are in agreement about specific ideas and specific concerns and specific goals? And then building readiness and commitment for change is also a very important piece of facilitation, is that when I am facilitating a conversation, a discussion, a design event, some sort of recognition of tasks that need to be completed, I am helping to build readiness in my team, and I'm helping to firm up the commitment that they have. Because as a participant in a facilitated session, when I am able to speak about change and I'm able to promote something or share my idea, and I can get aligned with others in the room, it really, really reinforces my commitment to the change. So that's an important piece to ensure that we have our commitment. And then I think, we want to recognize that we can do this virtually and we can do it in person. We don't have to do it only in person, as I was originally taught that we would facilitate in person, but we can also do it virtually. The key is, however, if you're doing it virtually, you must have everybody have their cameras on and their microphones on, because it is too easy to multitask and to not participate and to not mentally participate when we are multitasking, when we have our camera off and we can read email, and we can look at things, and we can, you know, interact with other people in our environment when our camera's off, and even when our microphone is off. I found that, I don't have the same level of awareness around what's being said or the quiet in the room so that I'm able to focus on the session that I'm participating in. So it's essential that if we're doing virtual facilitation, we have cameras and microphones on. And that's hard sometimes for people to ask for, especially in cultures where there is a norm of nobody turning on their camera, of saying, I would appreciate it if we could all turn on cameras and microphones so we could all be completely present for this facilitated discussion. I think that goes a long way to helping to helping others engage and get connected as in a facilitated session. I also think it's important to encourage interaction. So one of the things that I do immediately at the beginning of a session is I try to not spend a lot of time, but I think it's very important to spend some time letting everybody introduce themselves so that everybody has spoken. Because there's a funny dynamic. If somebody has not had the opportunity to speak, it's very difficult for them to speak up later in the meeting. Now, this can really be a problem when you have people who arrive late and you're already rolling and you're going and you say, hi, welcome, join us, but not taking that moment to ask them to speak is one of the things that will prevent them from fully engaging and participating. So even during the meeting, if somebody arrives late, camera on, microphone on, please introduce yourself. We're happy to have you here. And then I think there's other ways to build facilitation skills, but one of the biggest pieces is to practice. And so that's why I say, do a stakeholder identification and assessment where you're asking about their what they're going to gain, what they're going to lose, what they fear about this change. When we discuss the future state and what they think of that future state, I think there are also other ways that you can really start to practice facilitation skills. And that's just to be curious in meetings and to ask questions about, is there another way to do that? I'm just asking about, what I heard, and really actively listening, practicing our active listening so that we're able to hear what's being said and understand what's not being said. And then I think because this is a core skill for change management professionals and for project professionals as well, I think that we have to focus on developing this skill. I think we have to know that this matters, and this is going to have a tremendous impact on the quality of the information that we receive, so that we can make decisions on the understanding of the dynamics in the group and among the stakeholders, so that we can understand where we're having some sort of resistance. This facilitation skill is critically important. And I would love to share more about how to be an excellent facilitator and why organizational change management professionals need to really focus on some of this effective questioning and learning how to frame a question so that you're gaining the information that you need and you're actually surfacing anything that's underneath that might be a concern or a frustration, or maybe even a little bit of resistance that's happening. So I think when we look at our ability to facilitate discussions, this is a key skill that I want you as a change management professional to really hone, to focus on. And if you'd love to spend more time working on this, I think I may actually end up having a facilitation workshop sometime in the future to help change management professionals facilitate conversations more effectively. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, let me know, because I would love to include you in that. I also want to let you know that if you are looking for a holistic way to effectively lead change, you can join our Ready, Set, Change accelerated training and exam prep cohort that begins on June 1st. It runs for 3 weeks. You earn your 21 hours of required training to take the CCMP, and you'll also have your CCMP prep done, and you'll begin your 8-week study schedule for your CCMP exam. So if you're interested, I would love to have you in that group. We will talk about facilitation, and I would also encourage you to earn that CCMP because it really is the mark of a true change professional. Until next time, thanks for watching.